A 13-year-old orphan, Jonah Fletcher, wanders the scorched edges of 1884 Arizona, haunted by the mysterious fire that claimed his parents. Branded ghost child by cruel whispers, he scrapes by on scraps, his heart hardened, yet aching for purpose. One stormy dawn by the raging Gila River, a desperate cry pierces his solitude, setting him on a path that will redefine his destiny. By nightfall, a tribe's gratitude could transform his lonely existence into something extraordinary. But at what cost? Subscribe now and share where you're listening from to join this unforgettable tale. Will Jonah's courage bridge two worlds, or will shadows from his past consume him? Stay tuned to find out. Rain lashed the Arizona badlands, turning the Gila River into a snarling beast that churned mud and snapped branches like brittle bones. It was 1884, and Jonah Fletcher, a scrawny 13-year-old with eyes like chipped flint, picked his way along the riverbank, scavenging for dry wood. His boots, patched with burlap, sank into the sodden earth with each step, a reminder of the hunger gnawing at his gut. Orphaned by a fire that devoured his parents and their farm, Jonah was a ghost in these parts, shunned by townsfolk who whispered he carried a curse. The devil's own, they called him. He'd learned to trust only the knife tucked in his belt and the silence of his own company. The storm roared, wind tearing at his threadbare coat, but a sound cut through, a hoarse cry, sharp with desperation. Jonah froze, squinting through the gray curtain of rain. There, mid-river, an old man clung to a thrashing horse, its legs pinned by a fallen cottonwood. The man's silver hair, braided tight, whipped in the current, and his single arm gripped the beast's mane. His other sleeve hung empty, swaying like a tattered flag. The horse screamed, eyes rolling white, as the water surged chest-high around them. "Help!" the man rasped, voice nearly drowned by the river's roar. Jonah's first instinct was to bolt. Strangers meant trouble. Thieves, drunks, or worse, men who'd string a kid up for a nickel. But those eyes, dark and hollow as his own, pinned him where he stood. He dropped his bundle of sticks, heart pounding like a war drum. The river was a killer, swollen from 3 days of rain, dragging anything foolish enough to challenge it straight to hell. Jonah was no fool, but he'd seen too much death to let it claim another soul without a fight. Kicking off his boots, he plunged into the icy current. The water hit like a fist, yanking him sideways, filling his mouth with grit. He kicked hard, arms clawing through the murk, until his fingers snagged the old man's shirt. "Hold on!" Jonah shouted, voice cracking. The man's weight dragged like an anchor, threatening to pull them both under. The horse thrashed, hooves grazing Jonah's ribs, but he hauled backward, feet scraping for purchase on the slippery riverbed. Minutes bled into eternity, each gasp a battle. Jonah's arms burned, his lungs screamed, but he locked eyes with the old man, a silent vow passing between them. With a final heave, they collapsed onto the muddy bank, coughing up river water. The horse, freed from the tree, staggered ashore, trembling. Jonah lay there, chest heaving, as the old man's gaze settled on him. Grateful, heavy, like a debt neither could name. "Red Elk," the man said, touching his chest with his one hand. You're a brave one, boy." Jonah didn't answer, just nodded, too spent to speak. Those words, though, sparked something he hadn't felt in months. They stumbled to Jonah's makeshift shelter, a crumbling stable on the town's edge, its roof half-caved from a long-ago fire. Inside, the air smelled of damp straw and regret. Jonah tore a strip from his shirt, wrapping Red Elk's gashed leg, the blood soaking through fast. From his coat, he pulled a crust of cornbread, green with mold, but all he had. He broke it in half, offering it to Red Elk, who took it with a nod, like it was a feast. They ate in silence, the storm hammering the walls. "My people think I'm dead," Red Elk said, voice low. "My granddaughter, she sees things. If I don't get back, she'll suffer for it." Jonah's throat tightened. Nobody had needed him since the fire took his folks. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was someone's hope. Red Elk's eyes traced the stable's decay, the charred beams, the empty stalls where Jonah slept on a bed of sacks. "You're alone," he said. "Not a question." Jonah shrugged, used to pity, but Red Elk's look held no judgment, only recognition. "Lost my boy to a massacre," the old man murmured. "You and me, we know what the world takes." Jonah's fingers grazed his father's knife, its handle worn smooth by years of use. He didn't trust words, but Red Elk's understanding cracked something open inside him. If this story's pulling you in like it's pulling me, hit that subscribe button. It keeps these tales alive, and I'd love to know you're out there, riding along with Jonah's journey. Outside, the rain slowed, but the river still roared, a barrier between Red Elk and his tribe. Jonah glanced at the old man, his face pale beneath weathered skin, and made a choice. "We'll get you home come dawn," he said, voice steady despite the fear coiling in his gut. Red Elk gripped his shoulder, a spark of strength in his one hand. "You've given me more than life, boy. You've given me purpose." Jonah didn't know what waited across the Gila, but as he settled against the stable wall, the weight of being needed settled over him like a warm blanket. Dawn would bring answers, or trouble. Either way, Jonah Fletcher was done running. As dawn broke over the Arizona badlands, the Gila River's roar softened to a sullen growl, its muddy waters still churning with the storm's fading wrath. Jonah Fletcher, his thin frame shivering in the stable's damp chill, stood watch over Red Elk, the old warrior's breathing steady but weak. The boy's promise to get Red Elk home burned in his chest, a spark of purpose in a heart long starved of it. He didn't know what lay beyond the river, but the weight of the old man's trust tethered him to something bigger than survival. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of wet earth and distant pine. Jonah's ears pricked at a new sound, hoofbeats, steady and deliberate, cutting through the morning mist. He crept to the stable's splintered door, peering out. 3 shadows emerged from the haze, riders moving with the precision of hawks circling prey. Their silhouettes, cloaked in deerskin and feathers, loomed against the gray sky. Jonah's hand tightened on his father's knife, its blade a cold comfort. Strangers were rarely kind in these parts, and these riders carried the weight of purpose. Dangerous purpose. The lead rider, a young man with eyes like burning coals, reined in his horse. His face, streaked with war paint, was taut with suspicion. "Nighthawk," he said, voice sharp as a flint arrowhead, dismounting with a warrior's grace. Beside him, a woman with a bow slung across her back. Willow, her gaze cold and unyielding as desert stone, scanned the stable like a predator. The third, a young woman with feathers woven into her dark braid, dismounted last. Her eyes, deep and searching, locked onto Jonah with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Morning dove," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that belied her youth. Red Elk stirred, struggling to rise on his one arm. "My people," he rasped, limping to the doorway. "This boy saved me." Nighthawk's scowl deepened, his hand hovering near a tomahawk at his belt. "A white boy," he spat, the words dripping with distrust. "What's he want? Your scalp?" Jonah's jaw clenched, but he held his ground, meeting Nighthawk's glare. He'd faced worse than scorn in the alleys of this god-forsaken town. Willow stepped closer, her bow half drawn, sizing him up like a coyote, eyeing a stray calf. "Speak, boy," she said. "Why risk your neck for one of us?" Jonah's voice was steady, though his heart hammered. He was drowning. Didn't matter who he was. Mourning Dove tilted her head, studying him as if reading a map only she could see. "The dream spoke of you," she said, her words soft but heavy, like stones dropped in still water. "A boy from the river, carrying a bridge in his heart." Nighthawk snorted, but Red Elk raised his hand, silencing him. "This is Jonah," the old man said. "He's no enemy. He's the reason I breathe." The air crackled with tension, the rider's eyes darting between Jonah and Red Elk. Then, a rustle in the brush, a glint of steel from the tree line. Jonah's instincts screamed. "Get down!" he yelled, lunging at Mourning Dove as a rifle shot split the air. The bullet grazed the stable wall, splintering wood. Jonah hit the dirt, shielding her, his pulse roaring louder than the river had. Willow's bow snapped up, an arrow loosed in a blur, answered by a distant curse. Nighthawk was already moving, vanishing into the mist like a shadow. Moments later, he dragged a cursing bounty hunter into view, the man's rifle dangling uselessly from a bloodied hand. "Who sent you?" Nighthawk growled, his tomahawk glinting. The hunter spat, saying nothing, but his eyes flicked to Jonah, a silent accusation. Red Elk's face darkened. "They hunt me still," he murmured, "but this boy, he's no part of their game." Mourning Dove rose, her gaze never leaving Jonah. "The dreams didn't lie," she said. "You're coming with us." Jonah's stomach twisted. Leave his scraps of a life for a tribe that might never trust him. Yet the alternative was this stable, this loneliness, this half-existence. If Jonah's choice is gripping you like it's gripping me, hit that subscribe button. It keeps these stories riding strong, and I'd love to know you're out there, rooting for this boy's journey. The riders mounted up, Red Elk hoisted onto Nighthawk's horse, his wounded leg trembling. Jonah hesitated, then climbed behind Mourning Dove, her horse's warmth strange against his cold skin. The trail wound through canyons and sagebrush, the mountains looming like silent judges. Red Elk spoke of his tribe, their numbers dwindling as young warriors left for city promises. Mourning Dove, he said, kept their spirit alive with visions that pierced the veil of time. Jonah listened, the rhythm of hooves steadying his nerves. What did she see in him? A stray, a savior, or something else? The camp lay ahead, a circle of lodges under the vast sky, and with it, a future Jonah couldn't yet grasp. The tribal camp emerged from the dusk, like a heartbeat against the vast Arizona sky, its lodges huddling in a tight circle beneath the jagged silhouette of distant mountains. Jonah Fletcher, still clinging to the back of Mourning Dove's horse, felt the weight of unseen eyes as they descended the final ridge. The air carried the tang of sagebrush and wood smoke, a sharp contrast to the damp rot of his stable hideout. His promise to Red Elk had carried him this far, but now, with the camp's firelight flickering below, doubt gnawed at him. A white boy among a people who'd lost everything to men like his kin. What place could he claim here? The camp bustled with quiet purpose. Women stirred pots over crackling fires, their hands deft with woven baskets. Children darted between lodges, their laughter sharp and fleeting, like birds scattering before a storm. Men sharpened blades or mended tack, their glances cutting toward Jonah, some curious, others hard as flint. He slid off the horse, boots sinking into the dry earth, and stood beside Red Elk, who leaned heavily on Nighthawk's arm, mourning. Dove's gaze lingered on him, her eyes holding secrets he couldn't yet read. "Stay close," she murmured, leading the way toward the central fire pit, where embers glowed like a constellation trapped in the dirt. The tribe gathered as night deepened, their faces painted gold by the fire's dance. Jonah sat on a woven mat, his father's knife a cold weight against his hip, every stare prickling his skin. He was an outsider here, a pale shadow in a world of bronze and leather. Red Elk limped forward, his single arm raised to silence the murmurs. "This boy," he said, voice carrying the strength of a man half his age, "pulled me from the Gila's jaws. He's no stranger. He's Jonah, and he's earned his place." The words hung heavy, met with nods from some, skeptical squints from others. Nighthawk crossed his arms, his war paint stark in the firelight, while Willow's bow rested across her knees, her fingers twitching as if itching for a reason to draw. Mourning Dove stepped into the circle, her feathers chiming softly. "3 moons ago," she said, her voice clear as a desert spring. "I saw him in my dreams, a boy from the river, carrying a bridge between worlds." Whispers rippled through the crowd, and Jonah's chest tightened. Dreams. He'd never been part of anything bigger than his own survival. Yet her words stirred something deep, like a seed cracking open in barren soil. An elderly woman, her face etched with lines like canyon walls, nodded slowly, her eyes softening as they met his. A young warrior muttered to his neighbor, the words lost, but the tone sharp with doubt. Red Elk raised his hand again, and the tribe fell silent. "Tonight, we honor courage, not of battle, but of heart." Drummers began, their rhythm low and steady, pulsing through the earth into Jonah's bones. Dancers rose, their movements weaving a story of rivers and rescue, of a boy who chose to dive into death's grip for a stranger. Jonah watched, transfixed, as their shadows leaped across the lodges, telling his tale in ways his tongue never could. Mourning Dove leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "They dance for you," she whispered, "for the choice you made." His throat burned, not with fear, but with a strange pride he hadn't known he could feel. If this tale's stirring your soul like it's stirring mine, hit that subscribe button. It keeps these stories burning bright. And I'd love to know you're out there, sharing Jonah's fire. Red Elk approached, carrying a bundle wrapped in soft leather. He knelt before Jonah, unfolding it to reveal a necklace, beads of turquoise and bone, strung with sinew, centered by a carved wolf, its eyes glinting with polished jet. "This was my son's," Red Elk said, voice thick with memory. "He died shielding others, as you shielded me." Jonah's hands trembled as he touched the wolf, its weight heavy with meaning. "I can't," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's too much." Mourning Dove's hand rested on his shoulder. "You already took it when you chose grandfather over the river." Red Elk draped the necklace around Jonah's neck, the beads cool against his skin. The tribe erupted in a chant, voices rising like a wind sweeping the mesa. Children crept closer, fingers brushing the necklace, their giggles breaking the tension. Women brought bowls of stew, thick with venison and corn, more food than Jonah had seen in months. He ate, the warmth spreading through him, but the weight of the necklace pressed deeper, a responsibility he didn't fully grasp. Chief Black Coyote emerged from the largest lodge, his presence commanding silence. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, studied Jonah. "You saved one of ours," he said, voice resonant. "The river named you its son, and so do we. River's son." The title landed like a brand, searing away the ghost child whispers of the town. Jonah's heart thudded, torn between pride and a gnawing guilt. These people had lost land, lives, to men of his blood. Was he betraying his own by sitting here, claimed as kin? Mourning Dove sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the fire. "I saw more than your deed," she said softly. "I saw men coming, angry men, with steel and lies." Jonah's stomach twisted. "When?" he asked, voice low. Her eyes met his, shadowed with fear. "Soon. Too soon." The drums faltered, then resumed, their beat now carrying an edge of warning. The celebration continued, but Jonah's newfound belonging felt fragile, like a spark in a dry wind. Children laughed, dancers spun, yet Mourning Dove's words hung over him, a storm gathering on the horizon. The fire burned lower, casting long shadows across the camp. An old man tossed sage into the flames, the smoke curling upward, sharp and cleansing. Jonah's fingers traced the wolf pendant, its carved lines grounding him. He glanced at Red Elk, the old warrior's face etched with quiet pride, and at Nighthawk, whose scowl had softened, though his eyes still held wariness. Willow sharpened an arrowhead nearby, her movements precise, her glance toward Jonah less hostile now. The tribe had opened a door for him, but Mourning Dove's vision loomed like a thunderhead. What men were coming? And why did her words make his blood run cold, as if the past he'd fled wasn't done with him yet? As the night deepened, Jonah felt the camp's rhythm settle into his bones, the drums, the chants, the crackle of fire. For the first time since the fire took his parents, he wasn't alone. But the necklace, the title, the trust, they came with a price. Mourning Dove's hand brushed his, fleeting but firm. "You're not just here for grandfather," she said. "The dreams chose you for what's coming." Jonah nodded, his jaw tight. The camp glowed under the stars, a fragile sanctuary in a land that devoured the weak. Whatever lay ahead, River's son would face it, not as a ghost, but as a boy with a name worth carrying. The Arizona dawn sliced through the tribal camp like a blade, its golden light clashing with the shadows of last night's fire. Jonah Fletcher, newly named River's son, stood at the camp's edge, the wolf pendant cold against his chest. Mourning Dove's vision, angry men with steel and lies, hung over him like a vulture circling. The camp buzzed with tension. Women tied bundles with deft hands. Men checked knives and bows, their eyes scanning the horizon. Children, sensing the shift, clung to their mothers' skirts, their laughter silenced. Jonah's fingers brushed his father's knife, its worn handle a tether to a past he couldn't outrun. Whatever was coming, it was close, and the air tasted of dust and dread. Hoofbeats rumbled from the valley, a low thunder that set Jonah's pulse racing. A dust cloud swelled, spitting 12 riders onto the ridge, their territorial flag flapping like a taunt. At their head rode Horace Briggs, a former officer turned mining company dog, his badge glinting with false authority. His scarred face, etched with cruelty, twisted into a grin as he spotted Jonah. "Well, ain't this a sight?" he drawled, voice thick with venom. "Tom Fletcher's whelp, gone native." Jonah's breath caught, the words ripping open old wounds, flames licking his family's farm, his mother's screams, his father's desperate push to save him. Briggs wasn't just a threat. He was the ghost of that fire, the man whose shadow had haunted Jonah's nightmares. Chief Black Coyote stepped forward, his stance solid as the mesa. "This land is ours," he said, voice steady as stone. "No man's paper steals what the earth gave." Briggs dismounted, tossing a crumpled deed into the dirt, its ink as false as his smile. "Territorial law begs to differ. 3 days to pack, or we burn this camp to ash." His men spread out, hands on revolvers, their eyes cold with purpose. Jonah's heart hammered, memories flooding back. The crackle of burning timbers, his father's ledger hidden in a scorched crate, its pages proof of an honest life. Briggs's gaze pinned him, narrowing. "You're Fletcher's boy, ain't you? Your pa owed me, gambling debts, time you paid up." Jonah's jaw clenched. His father had tilled soil, not cards, but Briggs's lie carried a predator's weight. Then it struck him. The ledger's neat script, nothing like the scrawl on Briggs's forged paper. "You're a liar," Jonah said, stepping into the open. voice cutting through the morning chill. My pa kept records, every cent accounted for. Your deed's a fake, and I know it. The tribe stirred, their eyes darting from Jonah to Briggs, who laughed, a sound like a rattlesnake's warning. Big talk for a kid, he sneered, hand drifting to his pistol. Maybe I bury you with your pa's debts. Red Elk limped forward, his one arm trembling, but his face carved from defiance. This boy's worth more than your lies, he said, planting himself between Jonah and Briggs. The air snapped taut, every breath a spark in a powder keg. Nighthawk's hand hovered near his bow, Willow's arrow nocked and ready. Mourning Dove stood at Jonah's side, her presence steadying him like a root in loose soil. Check the territorial office, Jonah pressed, voice rising. You'll find debts in my pa's name, signed after he was dead. Handwriting that matches yours, Briggs, not his. The accusation landed like a spark in dry brush, and Briggs's grin faltered, sweat beading on his scarred brow. Marshal Kane, a grizzled lawman among the riders, tilted his hat back, his eyes sharp as a blade. That so, Briggs? Forging a dead man's name? Briggs fumbled, reaching for his saddlebag, but his hands betrayed him, shaking like a cornered animal's. I got papers, he muttered, voice cracking under the weight of his own guilt. Jonah didn't flinch, his fear burned away by truth. You burned our farm to hide your scam, he said, each word a hammer. Thought a kid wouldn't fight back, but I'm here, and I'm calling you out, the tribe murmured, their doubt in Jonah shifting to suspicion of Briggs. Black Coyote's gaze hardened, his silence louder than words. Briggs's face twisted, rage overtaking fear. Enough, he roared, yanking his pistol free, the barrel aimed at Jonah's heart. Time froze, the black muzzle of void swallowing the world. Red Elk lunged, his one arm shoving Jonah aside as the shot cracked across the valley. Blood bloomed on the old warrior's shoulder, a red stain spreading fast. But Nighthawk was quicker. His arrow sliced the air, piercing Briggs's gun hand. The pistol spun into the dirt, its shot kicking up dust. Willow's second arrow pinned Briggs's sleeve to his saddle, trapping him. Kane moved like lightning, slamming Briggs to the ground, iron snapping around his wrists. Horace Briggs, the marshal growled. You're under arrest. Forgery, fraud, attempted murder. Briggs thrashed, spitting curses, but his men hesitated, their resolve crumbling under Kane's glare. You burned the Fletcher farm, Jonah said, voice low but clear, and used my pa's name to steal from others. Kane's eyes narrowed, piecing it together. Heard of a forgery ring running through the territory, he said, hauling Briggs up. Dead men's names on mining claims. Sound familiar? Briggs's defiance broke, his face paling as the truth closed in. Kane turned to Black Coyote. Your land's safe, Chief. I'll see to it in court. No companies touching this ground. The chief nodded, his dignity a quiet rebuke to Briggs's greed. The riders hauled Briggs away, his shouts fading into the dust. The camp exhaled, children creeping from the lodges, women untying their bundles with trembling hands. Red Elk, bloodied but standing, gripped Jonah's arm with surprising strength. River, son, he said, voice rough with pain. You've got a choice. Kane can take you to town, find you a new start among your own, or you stay. Jonah looked around, and the faces were no longer strangers. Morning. Dove's eyes held steady, a quiet promise in their depths. Nighthawk gave a grudging nod, respect outweighing his earlier scorn. Willow sheathed her arrow, her glance almost warm. The ledger, the fire, his old life. They were gone, burned to nothing but memory. Jonah's fingers closed around the wolf pendant, its carved lines anchoring him to this place, these people. I'm home, he said, voice firm as the earth beneath him. Mourning Dove's smile broke like dawn, her hand brushing his in silent agreement. Black Coyote placed a hand on his shoulder. "You'll learn our ways, River's son, and we'll learn yours. Together, we stand stronger." The camp stirred back to life, the threat gone, but the scars remaining. Under the rising sun, Jonah knelt by the Gila, his father's knife in hand. He carved a wolf into a riverside cottonwood, its lines deep and sure, a mark of blood, of belonging, of a boy who'd found his place in a world that tried to break him. The sun sets on Jonah Fletcher's journey, from a ghost child to River's son, carving his place by the Gila. His courage and choice wove a bridge between worlds, proving family is forged, not just born. What did this tale stir in you? Share your thoughts below. Your voice keeps these stories alive. I'm grateful for every one of you riding along, sharing this dusty trail through Arizona's heart. Your support means more than words can convey. Until the next firelit tale, keep the spirit of the frontier close, and I'll meet you again under these wide, star-streaked skies for another story of grit and redemption.